current affairs for the month of March for the optional subject Public Administration. So you can clearly see list of the topics are quite less compared to the earlier months, but when we talk about diversity of topics, they are quite a lot. Fundamental rights, when we say it is available for a citizen, when it comes to civil servants, they must restrain from making such irresponsible and insensitive comments. They are behaving in a very immature manner, and this is unbecoming of an officer. This is not a depiction of theory Y. Hello everyone, welcome to PW OnlyIAS, current affairs for the month of March for the optional subject Public Administration. So without any further delay, let me take you right into it. But before that, as you all know, this is my official Telegram channel. Any doubts or queries, whatever you may have, you may post it over here. And apart from this, you can also send your answers in the PYQ format to this channel here from 2013 onwards. The PDF format, the PYQs from 2013. Okay, people. So, of GS 1, 2, 3, 4, the essay, as well as public administration optional. So let us look into the list of the topics what we will be covering here for the month of March. Civil servants, judiciary, accountability, diffraction or differentiation, domination, legislature, executive, systems theory, local governance, integration, participative management. Informal groups, NPM, CAG, digital governance, CAT, governor, civil services, data point, PSUs. As you can clearly see, list of the topics are quite less compared to the earlier months, but when we talk about diversity of topics, they are quite a lot. So let us start with civil servants first. District collector blames victim for sexual assault in Tamil Nadu transferred after public outrage. At a training program on the POCSO Act, Mr. Mahabharati said the girl had behaved wrongly by spitting on the boy and this might have led to the incident. In the evening, the government transferred him and posted E-Road Corporation Commissioner H.S. Srikanth in his place, Chief Secretary N. Muruganandam said in an order. Now, what is the whole thing about? Basically, a boy sexually attacked a girl. And the reasoning apparently found by the collector himself was that because the small girl, who is just 4 years old, spit on the boy, and this could have been the reason why the boy was he was instigated to rape the girl. I know, as you hear it itself, you can feel what illogical and how insensitive the comment is. This indicates what? This clearly indicates why public servants refrain themselves from making statements of very sensitive nature or any statement on an ongoing investigation they should not make. Fundamental rights, when we say it is available for a citizen, when it comes to civil servants, they must restrain from making such irresponsible and insensitive comments. Getting the point here? That is why we need reasonable restrictions on what? Reasonable restrictions on what the civil servant might say or shouldn't say. AP suspends IPS officer for unauthorized foreign visits. The DGP rank officer who was waiting for posting was placed under suspension under Rule 3.1 of AIS. He had allegedly made multiple foreign visits without permission from the government. Lack of accountability and lack of transparency. Now one must understand here, this clearly showcases what? This clearly showcases why it is necessary that we need to have a proper mechanism in place where such things doesn't happen. Agreed, the civil servant was punished later, but how was he even able to travel in the first place if he had not informed his department? Who authorized the leave? How did he even manage to leave the state, let alone the country? Moving further. So, what do we make out of this? We understood the news, great. But how will we interconnect it with public administration theory part? That is the most important thing. Both of this could be seen as what? A classic case of theory X. Correct? Immaturity theory. Because both of this, they are not taking any responsibility. They are behaving in a very immature manner. And this is unbecoming of an officer. This is not a depiction of theory Y. Getting the point here? So we can easily put over here what? Clear, people? Two transferred railway officials get punishment postings. The officials said these postings are considered punishment postings as they do not have any significant authority over rail operations. Two of the five railway officials shunted after the stampede that killed 18 passengers at the New Delhi railway station have been given fresh postings in the Northern Railway headquarters. So this is punishment because of the stampede that killed around 18 people. And the punishment is such that they have been given fresh postings, but no powers. That is why they call it what? Punishment postings. No clear authority, no responsibility, nothing. It is meant to ensure what? That such things are not repeated in the future. But at the same time, what will it lead to again? See, 18 passengers died. We cannot just simply blame the railway officials here. Stampede occurred because there was a huge rush at the railway station. Correct? So, in such a scenario, what if the officials are somebody who are very efficient? This could have happened with anybody, any railway official. Even while you are on duty, this could have happened. So somebody who could have been showing theory Y, now they will start showing what? Theory X. Correct. Odisha Vigilance arrests government staff for embezzling 3.5 crore. Two Odisha government employees responsible for implementing all major central and government welfare schemes have been found embezzling over rupees 3.5 crore for playing cricket betting online. Odisha's Vigilance Directorate and Anti-Corruption Wing has arrested Debananda Sagar, a suspended Panchayat Executive Officer in Kalahandi District, and Khetra Mohan Nayak, PEO, in Ganjam District. Sagar was accused of swindling government funds to the tune of rupees 3.26 crore. Again goes on to show what is lacking in the Panchayat level. As it is, the Panchayats are having multiple issues, from not having their own source of revenue much, always dependent on center and state for funds, and within that funds, if this is the attitude exhibited by the PEOs there, the Panchayat Executive Officers there, then the state of Panchayats in our country will continue to remain the same. This clearly shows that a meritorious, trained, highly qualified officers are necessary, not just at the center and state level, but at all levels of governance. Clear, people? Moving on. Coming to judiciary, judiciary always continues to be that one topic which will have heavy material and content. And this month also it is no different. Getting right into it. Supreme Court sets aside dismissal of two women judicial officers. It was time for the judiciary to be more sensitive to their well-being at work. Justice B.V. Nagaratna, heading a bench, voiced her concern about the physical and mental health of women in district judiciary, a branch haunted by tremendous workload, pendency of cases, and long hours perennially. The judgment came on a petition filed by two women judicial officers from Madhya Pradesh who was sacked for inefficiency and misconduct despite one of them having suffered back-to-back personal trauma, including a miscarriage, days in the intensive care unit for COVID, and her brother being diagnosed with cancer. The top court said, though gender cannot be an excuse for poor work performance by women judicial officers, it certainly was a critical consideration. Justice Nagaratna is currently one of only two women judges in the Supreme Court, which has a sanctioned judicial strength of 34. The top court referred to Article 10 of the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights that accorded special protection to mothers during a reasonable period before and after childbirth. So two women officers were actually sacked for what? For being inefficient and for misconduct. One of them actually went through a miscarriage. That is, she lost her baby. Her brother was diagnosed with cancer and she had spent a lot of time in the intensive care unit for COVID. That is, you can see back to back she was having what troubles in her life. So, judiciary has to be sensitive. This clearly shows that the principles what we talk about, that is NPM principles of Three E's: efficiency, economy, effectiveness. You cannot apply it in all the cases. A humanistic angle has also to be taken, should also be taken into consideration while taking a decision. This is very, very, very essential. So, in this particular case, it is exactly that the judge has taken. And she is again, Nagaratna, Justice Nagaratna, she is again one of the two women judges in Supreme Court. It is again due to this lack of empathy or lack of emotional values that we have in our system that women often we don't find at the higher echelons of power, be it in the judiciary, legislature or executive. So in such a situation, what does it mean? It simply means that when we are taking decisions at the end of the day should be a combination of values and facts. Clear, people? Moving on. Pay compensation to construction workers hit by GRAP, says Supreme Court. So Supreme Court has directed Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan to pay compensation to construction workers whenever they are hit by closure of activities due to graded response action plan measures in Delhi National Capital Region, even if there is no specific court order on it. Anti-pollution measures under GRAP are implemented based on average air quality in Delhi. So whenever GRAP is implemented, what automatically happens is construction work takes a hit in the city of New Delhi. So in this particular case, Supreme Court is basically telling to pay compensation. Supreme Court is directing the executive. Once again telling the executive to do what? Socio-economic welfare. Clear? This is a classic case of again judicial activism. Police are yet to fathom the right to free speech and expression, says Supreme Court. Justice Oka said the case raised the question whether the police of the country had still not wrapped their heads around the fundamental right of free speech and expression even 75 years after the Constitution. The bench referred to a tendency to stifle art and poetry. Some sensibility has to be shown by the police. They should at least have read the poem and understood. Effort should have been made to understand what the poem meant. This is respect for free speech and expression. That is arresting people simply because telling that they criticize somebody or criticize the government and all of that. Police this time directing the executive agencies like the police and asking them, why didn't you read the poem before you actually went on to make an arrest? Why is this rush to make an arrest immediately when somebody claims that, okay, this particular poem hurt the sentiments? Read the poem once. Then you apply your own brain. Then go ahead with an arrest if it is necessary, is exactly what Supreme Court is telling. Clear? What does this show? Lack of clarity. That is, even today there is a clear lack of clarity as to what actually tantamounts to a hate speech, what actually causes, let us say, inciting communal violence. When there is a lack of clear guidelines, police can do anything. Getting the point here? So this lack of clarity clearly indicates what? Clearly indicates why classical theory is very, very important. Classical theory gave importance to what? They gave importance to structure. So when you don't have any proper structure or system in place, the executive agencies or the field agencies will do their own, whatever they feel is right, they will do it. Getting the point here? Visually challenged persons suitable for judicial service, Supreme Court. If there is one principle that forms part of the bedrock of the Constitution, it is inclusivity, on which also rests the doctrine of equality. The court said it was high time Parliament considered amending Article 15 of the Constitution to include disability as a ground for non-discrimination. Disability as a ground for non-discrimination was not included in Article 15. A constitutional amendment to Article 15 to address this glaring omission has been a long-standing demand of the disability rights movement. The top court said any indirect discrimination that results in the exclusion of persons with disabilities from judicial service, that is either through rigid cutoffs or procedural barriers, must be removed to uphold substantive equality. Differently abled persons who have the requisite educational qualifications for applying to the post under judicial service must not be ignored. The court said relaxation could be done in assessing suitability of candidates when enough PWDs were not available after selection in their respective category and in accordance with the rules. What is the whole bottom line? Whole bottom line is this much. Just because somebody is blind does not mean that they are ineligible for judicial services. Supreme Court is bringing clarity into it. So once again, when we are talking about clarity, the biggest problem here is we have not clearly laid down structure for basically anything at all. That is a reality. Each and every time the Supreme Court has to intervene and the Supreme Court has to bring out a structure here, as a result of which what happens? Too many cases are filed, too many petitions are pending in front of the Supreme Court, and then there is a big backlog. Getting the point here. So once again, here also what do we see is a clear lack of structure as to who should be included in judicial service, who should be not, and how the constitution should have been framed, or how Article 15 should have been framed so as to make it more inclusive and non-discriminatory. Clear, people? Supreme Court seeks measures against vulgarity online. The Supreme Court on Monday, our Solicitor General Tushar Mehta appearing for the centre to suggest regulatory measures to rein in the use of filthy language and vulgarity which passes off as humor in programs telecast online. As you clearly know, this is again in the backdrop of that whole beer biceps vulgar comment, which really got circulated like a wildfire in the media, in the social media mainly. So the Supreme Court is directing again that some semblance of what conditions or regulation has to be brought in here. Because sometimes what happens is, in the name of humor, vulgarity is being pushed in to the mainstream. And with increasing number of people accessing online platforms for entertainment or even for information, some criteria has to be made so as to bring a decency into the whole thing. Now, some people may say that no, this is against the right to freedom of speech and expression. But if I want to express something, I want to speak something, is it necessary that I need bad words or cuss words for it to express my opinion? If that is the criteria to express my opinion, then that clearly shows that I'm a pretty bland sort of a person, a vacant or an empty person who requires cuss words to express my thought points or viewpoints. Getting the point here. So this again indicates one more thing, that is here, this you can associate it with systems theory. Because this is no more the environment that we had 20 years ago. That is, today, most of the entertainment industry that you talk about, everything is online. We have Central Board of Film Certification to mute the cuss words or to cut those violent scenes or scenes which are too brutal and barbaric for visual viewing. But when it comes to online content, unfortunately, even today, there is no clear guideline as to what are the do's and the don'ts. So systems theory clearly tells us that it is high time that we have some sort of system in place here. Clear? Humor is an art. Humor is something that the entire family can enjoy. Nobody feels embarrassed. That is talent. Using filthy language is not talent. Talent is using ordinary words to produce humor. We have excellent comedians in Bollywood, writers of humor. People writing articles for him in the name of freedom of speech. We know how to handle them also. In this country, there is no fundamental right on a platter. Fundamental rights are enjoined by a duty. That is, people tend to forget this fundamental aspect, what Justice Kant has said very correctly. That is, fundamental rights are not something which is given to you for free and you can use however in any manner that you deem fit you can use. No. It is enjoined with a fundamental duty. You have a fundamental duty towards the society. You have a fundamental duty towards this country, irrespective of who you are. Even if you are the top politician or an ordinary common man, a famous businessman, a famous cricketer, a famous celebrity, whatever you are, all of us have a duty along with our fundamental right. Clear, people? Moving on. Supreme Court to examine plea against rules on blocking of online content without notice. The Supreme Court on Monday sought the response of the government on a plea challenging rules empowering it to block content on social media platforms without prior notice or fair hearing to persons who upload them. This was challenging the provisions of the Information Technology, Procedure and Safeguards for Blocking for Access of Information by Public Rules 2009. Rules 8 and 9 makes it optional for the government to inform the original creator of the online content about the proposed action to block. In fact, Rule 9 allows the government to block content in cases of emergency with hardly a word to the creator of the information. The petition said Rule 9 is put to arbitrary use as an emergency provision to block user content. Lack of prior notice, a reasoned order, a procedure to address grievances, or even an opportunity to be heard leave online content creators in the dark without a legal recourse. The opacity is worsened by Rule 16, which facilitates a blanket confidentiality regarding blocking requests, complaints, and actions taken for blocking information. Prior notice to the intermediary does not protect the rights of the content creator. The intermediary has no obligation to represent the originator or provide a defense on their behalf. Online intermediaries are protected by the Safe Harbor Clause under Section 79, which is an intermediary shall not be liable for any third-party information of the Information Technology Act. They have no option but to comply with the government's blocking action to not jeopardize their operations in the country. The government takes advantage of the language of Rules 8 and 9, which allow the designated authority to issue notice of the proposed blocking action either to the intermediary concerned or the original creator. The notice inevitably goes to the intermediary. So, what is this whole thing about? That is, if I have posted a content online, due to some reason government found it offensive. That is, I posted it, let us say YouTube. Due to some reason government found it offensive. Now, I have no clue about it, okay? I don't know that government has found it offensive. Government will place a request to the YouTube asking them to take this content down. Once it is taken down, I am not going to be informed. Number one, why it was taken down, that is also not informed. Even the intermediary, that is YouTube here, even did not give me either an explanation, nor the government need to give an explanation to YouTube also. So there is no way by which I can actually contest the government's claim. Now this has gone to where? This has gone to Supreme Court. Supreme Court is seeking the response from the center. What do you feel this is about? This is a classic case of participative management. Everybody are sitting down together here. That is, we are talking about 1 minute. Yeah, we are talking about government is involved. Software Freedom Law Center, which would be basically a NGO or a civil society organization. They are involved. Judiciary is involved, basically with regard to what? Putting up a structure for online content. What is objectionable and what is not. Clear? States need to protect patients from being fleeced by private hospitals, says Supreme Court. The Supreme Court on Tuesday directed states to consider framing guidelines to ensure patients are not exploited or compelled by private hospitals to buy medicines, implants, consumables, and medical devices at inflated prices from their own pharmacies or outlets. The court at the same time cautioned the states from taking a hard line while formulating the guidelines that would affect private investment in the health sector. A balance between excessive profit and investments in health sector. Too much of profit means will hurt consumer sentiments. Too much looking into consumer, that is the person who is taking the health services. Too much concern if you keep it on the patient, nobody would want to invest in the health sector then. A balance has to be reached here, a delicate balance, neither there nor here. Getting the point here? That means states will have to take what type of decision then? They will have to take satisficing decisions. Supreme Court bench expresses displeasure over the functioning of RERA. Functioning of RERA established under a central law to protect the investment of home buyers as well as to promote the real estate sector has been disappointing. The oral observation from a bench headed by Justice Surya Kant was triggered by a submission from senior advocate K. Parameshwar. A commonly seen phenomenon is when a project of a builder fails, other projects also follow suit. The senior lawyer said this train of events was seen across states. He suggested a regulatory mechanism within RERA Act to curb this trend, causing extensive damage to both home buyers and real estate companies. He urged for the court's intervention. In September last year, the court had expressed displeasure over the functioning of RERA, saying it had become a rehabilitation center for former bureaucrats who have frustrated the entire scheme of the act. RERA, Real Estate Regulatory Authority. The purpose of it was to protect the interests of largely of the consumers, that is the people who go to buy home, flat, whatever. But these days what we are seeing is, because the way RERA is functioning, Supreme Court is not happy with it. Number one, it has become a place for what? Retired bureaucrats gets appointed there. That is the first argument against it. Second argument is that if there is a builder, if one project of the builder fails, every other project also starts failing. This actually has brought down what? Development in real estate sector. New companies are not coming in. Home buyers are also now very scared to invest in fresh projects. The Supreme Court is clearly not happy with it. How can we link it with public administration? This is a feedback from Judiciary. Number one, accountability. Theory wise, you can say it is systems theory. Clear, people? Supreme Court directs states, union territories to provide full records of forest lands in 6 months. Stern warning that chief secretaries of states and the administrators of UTs would be held personally liable if they fail to constitute expert committees to identify forests in their respective jurisdictions in a month, followed by the preparation of consolidated records of these lands within the next 6 months. Submitted that several states had still not constituted expert committees in compliance with a Supreme Court judgment on December 12, 1996 and subsequent court orders. The center's law officers said that most states had not completed the exercise of consolidation of records of their forest lands under Rule 16.1 of the One Samrakshan Evam Samvardhan Adhiniyam Rules 2023. Rule 16 brings forest-like areas identified by the expert committees and unclassed and community forest lands under the protection of the law. The bench reiterated that the expression forest would be understood according to its broad and all-encompassing dictionary meaning as held in its TNth Godavarman, Tirumulpad versus Union of India and other judgment of December 1996 until further court orders. The 1996 judgment, besides including forest as understood in the dictionary sense, had held that expression forest in Section 2 of the original Forest Act of 1980 would cover all the statutorily recognized forests, whether they were designated as reserved, protected, or otherwise. Forests and their conservation would apply to any area recorded as forest in the government record, irrespective of the ownership or classification. The 96 judgment was reinforced by the top court in 3 subsequent orders in November 23, February 24 and as late as February 2025. A challenge to the amendments made to the Forest Act in 23. The petitioners have claimed that the amendments restrict the meaning of forest to 2 categories of land, that is, those declared or notified as forest by law and areas recorded in government records as forest on or after 25th October 1980. What is this whole thing about? Central government basically passed a law telling that forest means only those classified as forest and where in the government record it shows as a forest. Anything which is not classified or which is not in the government record will not be seen as forest. Supreme Court intervened and went back to its 1996 TN Godavarman Tirumulpad judgment, where the forest definition was based on what? The dictionary sense, be it reserved, unreserved, or anything else. Forest is forest. Complete coverage. What is the problem here? any investment activity now that has to be undertaken where forest has to be usurped, it will be very difficult for the government of India as well as the state governments. But clarity has been brought here by the Supreme Court. Got the point here? Supreme Court has taken upon itself to bring clarity to what a forest is. Theory Y behavior from the judiciary. Center awaits prospective names from high courts to be appointed ad hoc judges. Considering a backlog of over 18 lakh criminal cases. The Supreme Court on January 30 allowed the high courts to appoint ad hoc judges not exceeding 10% of the court's total sanction strength. Systems theory again, more than 18 lakh criminal cases are pending. So what else to do? You're going to take ad hoc judges. Clear? Care needed in government recruitment to keep public faith alive. Supreme Court. In India, the reality is that there are far more takers of government jobs than there are jobs available. Be that as it may, each job which has a clearly delineated entry process with prescribed examination and or interview process has only to be filled in accordance thereof. Absolute scrupulousness in the process being followed instills and further rejuvenates the faith of the public. So, what it clearly indicates is why what Woodrow Wilson said is still relevant. That is, you need a merit-based civil services where merit should be the main key. And for merit to take place, exams should be conducted in the most objective and transparent manner. Clear? Madras High Court fixes the cap on tourist vehicles to the Nilgiris and Kodaikanal. The Madras High Court on Thursday fixed a cap on vehicles entering the Nilgiris during the summer season between April and June this year, limiting the number to 6,000 tourist vehicles a day during weekdays and 8,000 vehicles during weekends. The cap for Kodaikanal is 4,000 vehicles a day during weekdays and 6,000 during weekends. Again, executive failed to do its job. Judiciary steps in. But sometimes when judiciary steps in like this, is judiciary looking into all the factors here? Are the orders given by the judiciary, does it fall within the zone of indifference or zone of acceptance of executive? That is $1 million question here. Are these orders conducive for the economy? Are these orders conducive for employment? This is the question. We cannot take fault with the judiciary here because when too many vehicles are going, obviously those regions, the climate of these regions, Nilgiris or Kodaikanal, that will definitely get affected. The fact of the matter here is, what about the other side of it? Getting the point here. Are the orders within the zone of indifference or within the zone of acceptance? Be it for the government, be it for the people there, be it for the economy there. The orders were passed after taking note that only 23,000 tourists could be accommodated in a day at the 1,035 commercial accommodations with 5,620 rooms apart from 575 licensed homestays in Nilgiris, and only much smaller number of tourists could be accommodated in Kodaikanal. The bench also ordered that tourists visiting the hill stations in e-vehicles should be given preference in issuance of e-pass and directed the local bodies concerned to take steps for establishment of enough number of electric charge points for the benefit of e-vehicle users. So yes, Supreme Court has tried to balance it, give it credibility, involving the local government there, taking note of the accommodation capacity there, and then they have given these orders. Clear? Moving on. Supreme Court says each vote has its own value and recount must not compromise ballot secrecy. It was hearing an appeal concerning the election to the position of Gram Pradhan for Chakka village in Uttar Pradesh in 2021. The appellant argued that there was an inconsistency in the number of votes cast. The presiding officer had stated that a total 1,194 votes were cast on polling day, but the final tally showed 1,213 votes. The Supreme Court noted that the winner had won the election by 37 votes and a dispute over 19 votes would not impact the poll results. Ordering a recount, the Supreme Court, referring to judicial precedents, reiterated that such an order must be given only if two conditions were fulfilled. 1. If the petition for setting aside an election has material supporting facts. 2. If the court concerned is prima facie satisfied that a recount was necessary to do complete justice. So everywhere we are hearing this issue, right? Poll, something is happening, counts are not happening, etc. Similarly, in a panchayat election, what they found out was that 1,213 votes they counted, or sorry, 1,194 votes were cast on the polling day, but final tally showed 1,213. Slight increase. And there will be always those discrepancies. How many votes, how many people voted, how many didn't. There will be always some 10 to 20% error margin will be there, because it is that somebody sitting there and counting this. That's it. It is not that you are digitally counting this using some camera or AI camera. No. So the point here is what Supreme Court is telling is, where there is no evidence of any wrongdoing, any booth capturing, and there is no evidence prima facie to suggest that some wrongdoing has happened, a recount or a re-voting is not at all necessary. Although in this particular case, after recounting, they found that even if that 37 votes total, the dispute was over 19 votes. Even if the 19 votes is given to the candidate who lost the election, it is not going to change the outcome. Clear? Right to development, a priority under fundamental rights. So once again, what can we give clarity to this? Like what Pabad theory? Once again, the structure. Correct. Right to development, a priority under fundamental rights. Supreme Court set aside in separate judgments on Monday NGT order and a Madras High Court decision to all development activities at Auroville. The decision cited lack of environmental clearance while outlining the need for sustainable development, which strike a golden balance between the rights to development and clean environment. Though it is true that the precautionary principle and the polluter pays principle are part of the environmental law of the country, it is equally true that while the right to clean environment is a guaranteed fundamental right under 14 and 21 of the Constitution, the right to development through industrialization equally claims priority under fundamental rights, particularly Articles 14, 19 and 21. That is, right to development is also a fundamental right under Article 14, 19, 21. Once again, bringing in what? Clarity. Supreme Court to consider if Lokpal has powers over judges of constitutional courts. So Supreme Court is going to examine in detail if judges of constitutional courts come within the jurisdiction of the country's top ombudsman Lokpal as public functionaries, including Prime Minister, Union Minister, members of Parliament and Union government officials. Supreme Court is going to consider it. This clearly once again shows why we need to have a system where the judges of our High Court, Supreme Court, even district judges are completely brought out into the open, including the judgments they are giving, from where, what are their source of their revenue, how are they appointed, how are these people interconnected. That should be out there. We talk about nepotism in politics, nepotism being there in the government, etc. And favoritism existing, be it in the government or be it in the parliament or in the state legislature. But can we say that judiciary should not be questioned on these things? That judiciary is ultimately the most cleanest organization in the country? And why is it that if Supreme Court or the High Court judges or the District Court judges for that matter, if they don't have anything to hide, why are they so scared? Accountability has to be ensured from everybody, because it is my tax, the taxpayers' money that ultimately goes to these judges as their salary. So taxpayers have every right to know who are these people, where are they coming from. Clear? Supreme Court flags contradiction between states' claims of high per capita income and people living in poverty. The Supreme Court on Wednesday questioned the claims of high development rate and per capita income when certain states have about 70% of their population living below the poverty line. The court wondered whether distribution schemes of subsidized essential food grains really reached the poor in the country. Union government was duty bound under National Food Security Act to provide food grains. She said that coverage under the act was 81.35%. So what is this here again? This is all about ensuring accountability. Getting the point here. This is straight away judiciary holding the executive accountable. This is supposed to be the role of judiciary, to call it foul or to call out what is wrong with the statistics when they feel that the data don't match, that the data what the states are projecting, that yeah, we have such a high economic growth, we are doing great, incredibly well, and the judiciary is calling it out that, you know, even though when you claim you are having a high per capita income, many people are still living in the poverty. So this you will categorize under where? Accountability. Clear, people? Moving on. Judges transfer is not related to rumors. Supreme Court. Now this is one thing which is constantly there in news. Like I told you, this is once again putting that whole question into debate. Who will tie the knot around the judiciary? That is, even after prima facie evidence is there of wrongdoing or of finding burnt notes in the judge's house, the only punishment is what? A transfer, and followed by that what? An inquiry which is going to be conducted by judges again. So this is almost like the police department, somebody does something wrong, and again within the police department itself you will call some people to go and conduct the investigation. Normally you call the vigilance or the CBI comes in, a central investigative agency can intervene if the officer in question is of a high ranking officer and they have done something major. Judiciary's case, sorry, we will appoint ourselves, we will decide the punishment, we will conduct the inquiry, and we will do whatever is needed. This does not attune well with a constitutionally run democratic country. Getting the point here? This is high time that we brought in what? We brought in NJAC or National Judicial Services. This strictly calls for it. Even if you don't find a question of this sort in your public administration paper, I'm guaranteeing you, you're going to find this question in GS paper 2. Do not publish NIRF ranking for 2025. High Court to Education Ministry. Restrain the Education Ministry and the National Board of Accreditation from publishing the National Institutional Ranking Framework for 2025. The court was hearing a public interest litigation petition. He claimed that the ranking was without any basis and was misleading students. The NIRF was launched by the NBA on the direction of the Education Ministry for evaluating higher education institutions. NBA publishes the ranking every year. Institutions are evaluated on 5 broad categories: teaching, learning and resources, research and professional practice, graduation outcomes, outreach and inclusivity, and perception. The NBA directs institutions to upload data on student and staff strength, staff salaries, graduation index, placement details, funds received for research and other parameters on its web portal. Based on this data, the ranking is awarded without further verification or auditing. What is the purpose of this ranking? First of all, the ranking's purpose is to give ranking to the colleges, which are the best colleges in the country, based on 5 possible outcomes. That is, what is the education, what are the passing notes, what are the placements, what are the research programs, etc., etc. The point is, now all the universities or institutions will upload their data. After this data is uploaded, NBA doesn't even verify whether all these claims are true or not. That is simply I have to upload the data. Based on this, NBA will give me a ranking. Comparing it with the National Assessment and Accreditation Council's annual quality assurance report, the petitioner said that NAC-ACAR documents were audited and checked by expert committees sent by the NAC to the institutions. The petitioner sought a direction to the NBA to publish the NRF ranking after comparing and verifying the data submitted by the institutions with the data in the government records and to disclose the calculation method. To have accountability, one of the foremost conditions is what? You need to have a clear, transparent, objective recording. This clearly shows what the importance of having post-corp reviews. Clear? Supreme Court considers question of timeline for speakers to decide on defections. The Supreme Court on Tuesday asked if constitutional courts cannot direct speakers who act as quasi-judicial tribunals under the anti-defection law to decide disqualification petitions filed with them under the 10th schedule of the Constitution within a specified period. A bench headed by Justice B.R. Gavai is hearing petitions filed by Bharat Rashtra Samiti leaders seeking timely action by the Telangana Assembly Speaker on disqualification proceedings pending against 10 MLAs who shifted allegiance to the ruling Congress in the state. Until now, the Apex Court had only urged the Supreme Court to decide the speakers to decide anti-defection pleas within a reasonable time. The court had not specified what the reasonable time ought to be in due regard to the constitutional office of the speaker. But, Justice said, constitutional courts were after all the custodians of the Constitution. The court considered the question whether a constitutional court was so powerless that it cannot direct a constitutional authority like the speaker to perform its mandate under the Constitution. The senior lawyer hinted at political partisanship which guided speakers while noting that in UK, the Speaker of the House was the last position held after abandoning active politics. Very, very true. In our country, especially if you see the speakers, because they are always from the ruling party, when it comes to taking action against the certain MLAs who would have joined the ruling party, as a result of which they are the majority and they end up being able to form the government. Speakers generally don't take action on those MLAs. That is, those MLAs who left their party and joined the ruling party, speakers generally don't take action as per the 10th schedule anti-defection laws. But if from the ruling party somebody goes to another party, they are very quick and fast in taking or in deciding matters of defection. So what Supreme Court has so far said is the reasonable time without actually fixing any time. So Supreme Court is asking, because we are the custodians of the Constitution, Speaker is also a constitutional authority, why can't we have the whole control with us? Getting the point here? Control in the sense, we will decide by what time Speaker has to take call. Clear? Coming to our next topic, that is accountability. Delhi used less than 75% COVID funds. CAG report. Delhi government used less than 75% of the funds released by the center to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic in the capital, according to a CAG report on public health infrastructure and management of health services. CAG highlighted a staff crunch at Delhi government hospitals and the lack of adequate medicines and equipment. It said that the bed occupancy rate ranged from 101% to 189% in 9 hospitals and from 109 to 169% in 7 other hospitals, indicating that more than one patient was accommodated in a single bed. A CAG report on the controversial Delhi liquor policy was tabled in the Assembly last Tuesday and has now been referred to a Public Accounts Committee of the state legislature. The report found that the Health and Family Welfare Department was unable to use any of the 15 plots it acquired at a cost of 648 lakh for establishing hospitals and dispensaries, despite having possession for periods ranging from 6 to 15 years. Simple. Why we need to have accountability, why need to have transparency, and the importance of CAG. Clear, people? Panel flags shoddy implementation of Centre's flagship tourism scheme. Members of the Public Accounts Committee called out the Union Tourism Ministry for shoddy implementation of its flagship scheme, Swadesh Darshan, launched in 2014-15. A total of 76 projects were sanctioned under identified thematic circuits in 31 states and union territories for 5,292.57 crore. The audit report had highlighted serious lapses in formulation and execution of the scheme. It had pointed out the government had not carried out feasibility studies before launching the scheme. The government had exceeded the sanctioned amount due to poor planning. Approvals were given without detailed project reports, and there had been no formal mechanism for evaluation and approval. The audit report also criticized the government for its failure to complete projects within the stipulated time frame. Another example of what? Accountability. Clear. DGCA asks airline to submit fair metadata to curb overpricing. DGCA, that is the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, is basically asking entire airlines to submit their metadata. Metadata simply means the data involving the booking of tickets during festive seasons, how much is the pricing, how much is the dynamic pricing there, the entire thing. They are asked to submit. Getting the point here? CJ forms 3-member panel for deeper probe against Delhi judge. Again, the repetition, the same thing. 3-member panel has been formed and now they will investigate and they will try to decide whether the judge is guilty or not. If it was in my home or your home that a bag of burnt currencies have been found, then don't worry, ED will come, and if we are very, very lucky, NIA also will come. But it is a judge's house, so, well, executive cannot interfere in it apparently. Diffraction or differentiation. Recognition of universities will be revoked if they flout discrimination rules. Union government informed the Supreme Court on Friday that a new set of regulations to wipe out discrimination, especially on the basis of religion or caste, will give the UGC teeth and power to de-recognize non-compliant higher education institutions. That is giving more powers to the UGC to de-recognize those universities that are discriminating students on the basis of religion, language, caste, or whatever. Now, this is called pure diffraction. Differentiation. That is, you're creating a body and you're asking them, you take care of it. For everything, why are you coming to me? For every problem within the university, why are you coming to the central government? I am making you in charge now. Now you take care of things. And that is how it is supposed to be. Each and every time we cannot actually comment, take care of things. The central government, or for that matter, even the state government, cannot keep intervening in matters of the universities. Internal matters. These are internal matters actually. Major issues, corruption, etc. Yes, center and state should intervene. Otherwise, give UGC enough power where they will be able to take care of these things. Getting the point here, people? Moving on. Domination. Overage vehicles in Delhi will be denied fuel from March 31st. Why domination is still considered to be one of the best theories when it comes to conflict resolution. Agreed, Mary Parker Foley will beg to differ. She will always love integration. But in case of the pollution of Delhi, there is no other way other than what? Domination. Domination will always take the cake when it comes to ensuring compliance. And in this particular case, what it is, overage vehicles will not be allowed to refuel in the capital from March 31st, Delhi Environment Minister Manjinder Singh Sirsa said on Saturday. It was one of the several measures Mr. Sirsa announced following a 3.5-hour meeting with various stakeholders on curbing air pollution in the city. That means he did have a discussion with, this domination came after what? After discussions with all the informal groups. Clear? Moving on. Legislature. Use of ballot paper not in panel's ambit. Law Ministry. The question of reverting to ballot papers does not fall within the ambit of the mandate of a joint parliamentary committee examining the two bills on simultaneous polls, the Union Law Ministry stated. Going back to the ballot paper system was a suggestion made by some of the members of the committee, and the ministry was to respond to it in writing. The ministry is learned to have said it was out of scope of the parliamentary panel to make a suggestion on the use of the ballot paper system. The committee is mandated to examine the bills on simultaneous polls, the Constitution 129th Amendment Bill and the Union Territories Laws Amendment Bill, and give its report on whether they are sound enough for the purposes or need changes. While the Constitution Bill lays down a legal framework to hold the Lok Sabha and Assembly polls together, the Union Territories Laws Bill seeks to align the terms of assemblies of Delhi, Puducherry and Jammu and Kashmir for the purpose of holding joint elections. Delhi, Puducherry and Jammu and Kashmir are the three union territories with assemblies, giving a clarity that this is not within our control. Legislature is telling this is not within our ambit. That means having a clear idea where my power will start and where my power will end. We cannot call it a blame shifting. It is rather acknowledgement. We can actually even quote this under diffraction because you have a clear idea what you are supposed to do. Joint Parliamentary Committee can definitely be quoted as what? An example for integration. Parliamentary panel asks government to conduct census at the earliest. Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs has recommended that the census be completed at the earliest. These points you can suggest it easily in your answer paper. Be GS2, paper 2 of public administration as suggested reform of public administration, or any way forward, or even when you talk about diffraction principles, you can suggest this. Popularize fortified grain scheme, says Standing Committee. Standing Committee on Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution has recommended the centre to ensure meticulous implementation of the scheme of distribution of fortified rice across the country, with particular emphasis on the states where rice is a staple food. Again, what? Diffraction. Participative management, because Standing Committee is giving a suggested solution. Again, parliamentary panel are centered to spend more on agriculture and rename the ministry. You can even give this as an example of what? A metrics organization. Clear, people? Continuing with our discussion further, panel flags gaps in implementation of center's rural housing scheme. So, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Rural Development has accused the government of failing to identify genuine beneficiaries for its flagship rural housing scheme, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. The scheme actually relies on 14-year-old data from the socio-economic census of 2011 to find beneficiaries. Once again, this highlights the point why we need to have this whole census to be conducted on time. It is high time. It criticized the government for not increasing the financial aid given under the scheme, which aims to provide housing for all. Though the government last year extended the scheme by 5 years, the assistance has not been increased. In view of the rise in construction cost and inflationary pressures, the committee recommended that the per unit cost of the houses under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana be increased to Rs 4 lakh to ensure that beneficiaries receive quality housing that meets the minimum standards of safety and durability. So these are the points that you can always give under suggestions and way forward. This will actually help your answer writing better. And this is what exactly the legislatures are supposed to do. The standing committees are supposed to evaluate the schemes of the government and give them constructive criticism, which will actually help in what? Which will actually help in providing better facilities for the people. Now again, this can be also cited as a very good method for what? Integration. Correct? Finalize norms before announcing schemes in budgets. Report. A parliamentary standing committee has advised the Union Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs to hold consultation with stakeholders and prepare and finalize the documents and guidelines to schemes prior to announcing them in budgets. This would avoid allocation and parking of funds for such schemes wherein approvals would spill to subsequent financial years. With respect to two schemes announced in this year's budget, Urban Challenge Fund and Scheme for Industrial Housing with allocations of 10,000 crore and 25,000 crore respectively. So, the point here is, when you are announcing something itself, create a proper structure to it. You are announcing two new schemes. What are the two new schemes that you have announced now? You have announced, 1 minute, you have announced basically Urban Challenge Fund at 10,000 crore and scheme for, and then scheme for industrial housing at 25,000 crore. So for both the schemes to be implemented, what is the first thing necessary? Structure. So structure means, obviously we are talking about classical PABAD. This clearly shows that classical PABAD will never go out of fashion. No matter how much our public administration evolves, becomes all the more AI enabled or whatever it is, technology oriented, it should have a proper structure first. Without that structure, no amount of technology, no amount of automation is actually going to bring in any positive change. Clear, people? Moving on. Over 3,200 Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana Jan Arogya hospitals must be penalized for fraud, regulation is required. NHA. 600 hospitals across India should be suspended and another 1,113 removed from center's flagship health insurance scheme, and penalties totaling 122 crores should be levied against 1,500 errant hospitals according to recommendations made by the National Health Authority's Anti-Fraud Unit. Noting the unit's report on the misuse of funds under the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Health and Family Welfare expressed concern about the way some hospitals were carrying out such fraudulent activities as part of their business model. Regulation is needed to check such fraud, the committee said in its report on the demand for grants tabled in Parliament on March 12. National Health Authority has adopted a zero tolerance policy towards fraud and abuse and has taken steps to prevent, detect and deter different kinds of fraud at various stages of AB PMJAY's implementation. The committee recommended that NHA implement a proactive, data-driven and transparent monitoring system focusing on early detection of potential misuse patterns in Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. This clearly tells us that bringing a scheme alone is not enough. Always every hospital that is out there, public or private, they will find a way to do what? To basically do some or the other corruption. And here, how many hospitals are we seeing? More than 3,200. Getting the point here. So we must hold them accountable. We must bring in systems, digital systems especially, to check it and eliminate it at the budding stage itself. This is a clear example of what? Why we need digital governance. None of the 1,275 gazetted posts filled in Ladakh in nearly 6 years. Government. None of the 1,275 gazetted posts in Ladakh have been filled since the region became a centrally administered territory in 2019, according to information provided by the Union Ministry of Home Affairs. Recruitment rules for 75 categories of gazetted posts, aggregating a total of 1,142 posts, have been framed. Jobs and lack of employment opportunities were at the heart of protest witnessed by the Union Territory in the past 5 years. Ladakh, comprising the Kargil and Leh divisions, had erupted in protests on several occasions since 2019. So why are they actually creating trouble there or protest there? Very simple. Basic needs are not met. So this clearly indicates what? The basic hygiene needs, basic needs, that is job you need. Correct. So definitely we are talking about which two thinkers here? We are talking about Maslow. Why Maslow is needed and why Hertzberg is relevant today. Clear, people? Moving on. Hike MGNREGS wages to match price rise. Parliamentary panel. So if you actually look at now, two parliamentary panels have basically suggested. One has suggested actually Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana's funding should be increased. It should be made 4 lakh per unit. Another parliamentary panel has actually suggested what? Committee has strongly argued for the revision of wages under NREGA in view of the rising cost of living. Currently, the per day wages vary from 234 in Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh to 374 in Haryana and Sikkim. Alright, the report mentioned the case of West Bengal, which has not been receiving funds for NREGA activities since March 2022. The center stopped the funds in the state over allegations of corruption in the implementation of the scheme. Clear, people? So once again, what does this highlight? Integration. Once again, what does this highlight? Systems theory. Here I will put up systems theory because integration we have already used up. The importance of feedback, the importance of having accountability, parliamentary accountability. Scholarship amount offered by Social Justice Ministry not enough to meet costs. Again, costs. The amount of annual scholarship offered to SC, OBC, denotified, nomadic and semi-nomadic, economically weaker section students under the gamut of educational schemes of the Social Justice Ministry are not enough to meet present-day costs of getting proper and quality education, a departmental house panel on social justice has said in a report. The report was tabled in Parliament on Monday, recommending regular reviews of the scholarship amounts to contain the inflation. The committee in its report pointed out that the department had spent more than 3,000 crore on educational scholarship schemes, compared to 6,000 crore in 2022, 7,000 crore in 23-24. Panel headed by Karnataka MP also noted that about 72% allocation spent on scholarships and education schemes, urging the government to focus on other schemes also and seek more funds. Why? cost or price rise. That is the reason why they are recommending it. So we can clearly see here, we can also say that theory Y behavior. Correct? They are being proactive. They are giving suggestions to the government looking into the future. So there you go. Theory Y. This is a maturity theory. Correct? Lok Sabha approves demands for grants of 50 lakh crore for various ministries. Hello? Hmm. Hello? Moving on. Lok Sabha approves demands for grants of rupees 50 lakh crore for various ministries. The Lok Sabha on Friday passed the demands for grants for various ministries for 2025-26, approving expenditure of more than rupees 50 lakh crore. The House passed the demand for grants by applying the guillotine, which means the funds for the ministries is applied on are considered approved without a discussion. Getting the point here, people? That is hardly a discussion takes place with regard to the demand for grants of various ministries. So obviously what happens because of this, there is very little scrutiny before the funds are approved for various ministries. In fact, most of the scrutiny happens when post-mortem. After the money has been spent, after the ghotala takes place, or after the corruption takes place, or after we get to know, come on, this was useless. Getting the point here? That is one major drawback of the structure of our parliament or our budget. Clear, people? Pursue centralization of Eklavya schools, House panel urges government. A parliamentary panel on social justice on Wednesday asked the union government to urgently pursue the centralization of Eklavya schools and empower the National Education Society for tribal students further to run them. That is to bring in a certain sense of uniformity. So always we will keep telling that first it was centralization, then it was decentralization. But from centralization, once again we are moving towards what? Centralization again. Why it is being possible today? Because technology is available. Uniformity can be ensured better without compromising on independence at the local level. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Social Justice and Empowerment also noted the slow progress in the implementation of the PM Janman package across 29,000 villages where particularly vulnerable tribal groups reside. In the report, the panel also pointed out the union government's project to set up tribal freedom fighters museums to honor their struggles was moving slowly, noting that only 3 of the 11 sanctioned museums had been inaugurated so far. Clear, people? So this totally, what can we say? This is actually moving from decentralization just a minute. Decentralization to re-centralization. Clear, people? Fertilizers Committee warned Ministry against underfunding of nutrient subsidy schemes. Parliamentary Standing Committee on Chemicals and Fertilizers to seek additional funds for the sector at the revised estimate stage to ensure that subsidy schemes for farmers are not negatively affected. In a report on demands for grants tabled in Parliament recently, the panel also recommended to the centre the expansion of production capacity of nano-urea and nano-diammonium phosphate by ensuring the timely establishment of production units. The committee noted that while the central facilitates agreements between Indian fertilizer companies and their counterparts in resource-rich countries to ensure the availability of raw materials, intermediates, and finished fertilizers, no efforts have been made to secure mining lease agreements for extraction, exploration, refining, or production. That means international level collaboration, participative management, metrics organization, NPM, All that is there. Domestic level, hardly any effort. The panel observed that while the Department of Fertilizers had projected an outlay of 1,84,704.63 crore, Ministry of Finance has reduced this allocation by 7.3 percentage. Reduction has been made in both the nutrient-based subsidy scheme and the urea subsidy scheme of the department. The committee also highlighted the underutilization of funds across various categories during 2024-25, including 20% under indigenous phosphorus and potassium fertilizers, 12% under imported potassium and phosphorus, 14.76% under indigenous urea, and 59.57% under market development assistance. It recommended that center ensure full utilization of allocations in a planned manner. So, allocation has reduced by more than 7%. Underutilization is also there under various schemes. This center need to take care of. Integration you can put. Theory by behavior being put up by parliament, that also you can put. Accountability of the central government with regard to various schemes under Ministry of Agriculture, that also you can put. Anywhere you can put this up. Getting the point, people? And again, citing an increase in crop yield when combining nano urea with conventional urea, the panel noted the highest yield improvement in peas and the lowest in sugarcane. Feed trials on nano DAP have revealed that its use for seed treatment and foliar application could potentially reduce the requirement for conventional granular DAP. The committee recommends that the Department of Fertilizers should expand nano urea and nano DAP production capacities by ensuring the timely establishment of the units envisaged in the future. They're talking about domestic production, indigenous production, more than foreign collaboration. Clear? Executive. Himachal government planning to dismantle drug network in a mission mode in 6 months. To curb the drug menace in Himachal Pradesh, Chief Minister Sukhwinder Singh on Saturday directed the police department to initiate a crackdown to dismantle the drug network, even as he announced that the services of government employees would be terminated if they were to be found involved in the drug trade. Menace which is growing up in under internal security, it is a very important article. Executive taking action based on what? Again, systems theory. EC revisits epic Aadhaar link plan after 2015 halt. Amid opposition allegation of manipulation of voters list, Chief Election Commissioner has called a meeting with Union Home Secretary, the Legislative Secretary, and the Chief Executive Officer of the Unique Identification Authority of India to explore linking of voter ID with Aadhaar. This will eventually happen. Take it from me. People may say, sir, what about the right to privacy, Puttaswamy judgment? It is beyond that now. Because already there are multiple, the problem here is people with the same names or people with having the same election voters ID card, but with different names and different addresses. That has already been made an issue by various political parties. EC had to give a long list of explanation to various political parties and various stakeholders that, even though the voters ID number is the same, each person is from a different constituency or a different state, so there is no question of overlapping. But even then, if you think about it, same voters ID for two people, but in two different states, doesn't sound actually transparent or doesn't sound actually to be very safe. So what is really required? We really need what? Unique number for everybody, just like our Aadhaar card. And once this is done, bogus voting, double voting, all of this can be put to an end. Getting the point here? So this is again part of what? You can call it Aadhaar based governance. India plans to entirely fence its 1,643-kilometer long border with Myanmar in 10 years. A March 10 parliamentary panel report said that the Cabinet Committee on Security had in March 2024 approved a proposal worth 31,000 crore to fence the Indo-Myanmar border and to construct roads to provide better connectivity to company operating bases of the Assam Rifles. Again, what does this indicate? This just goes on to indicate the necessity of having proper border system. What will this come under? No doubt, systems theory again. Because it is a feedback taken from the environment. Chhattisgarh government hopes to attract Naxals with new policy. The Naxal Surrender and Victim Rehabilitation Policy 2025 bundles new features for all stakeholders in the conflict, like receiving 50,000 rupees. In some case, it will be 2 lakh. Then providing them cultural land or agricultural land for 1,742 square feet for making residential areas. Then a subsidy of up to 5 lakhs, provide 40% of their salary. That is basic idea is to provide them enough financial package where they will just drop the weapons and join the mainstream. That is the ultimate idea. Clear? So this is mostly true from an internal security perspective, but this clearly shows how we are. Today, modern governance is about engaging with informal groups, even though they are illegal. Clear? Systems theory. Clear? Systems theory. Easy to remove all duplicate voter ID numbers. Taking cognizance of reports that certain electors in one state have voter ID numbers matching those issued in another state, the Election Commission on Sunday said irrespective of the number on the elector photo identity card, a person could vote only at the designated polling station in the constituency in a state or union territory where he or she has enrolled. EC, however, said it would remove the duplication and ensure that each voter get a unique number. The 10-digit number is printed on the ID card issued to each elector. Clear, people? So, why this happened? This happened because earlier this was being done manually. Each person voter ID was issued manually. Later on, they brought this Aeronet. Aeronet is what? Aeronet is a web-based platform developed for election officials in multiple languages and scripts to handle all processes pertaining to registration, migration, and deletion of names from the electoral rolls. So, it led to duplication of data. On one side, you have written document. On another side, you have something like digital document. That overlapped. So finally, EC has decided for what? Giving unique numbers to all. So it is quite possible that some people's voter ID may change. ID number may change. Again. Digital governance. Maharashtra to start media monitoring center to identify misleading reports. According to the resolution, the proposed center will systematically collect and evaluate news content, identifying both factual and misleading reports. It will generate comprehensive factual analysis and issue real-time clarifications in cases of inaccurate or negative coverage. The initiative aims to ensure timely and accurate dissemination of information related to government policies, schemes, initiatives, the resolution said. That is basically to have a center. What type of center? Media monitoring center with a budget of 10 crore. Basically to look at the type of content that is being published in the media and to ensure the veracity of the claims. That's the purpose of it. So, what do you call it? In one way, if you actually see, you can call it as domination. Why domination? Because the government is trying to act as a super powerful body and can impose penalties on news channels for actually reporting something erroneous. According to the government, it is. Some other way of viewing it is what? Disintegration. If a news channel is not reporting anything wrong, then what is the issue here? Even if a center is being found, what is the issue? If as long as I am able to prove that, okay, whatever I published in my channel or whatever I published in the paper, online, wherever it is, I can back it up with proper sources or proper data, then there is nothing to worry. Getting the point here, it all comes down to how you are going to view it. Government launches AI Kosha, repository of data to build models and tools. So this AI Kosha's main purpose is what? AI Kosha's main purpose is to actually encourage people to create more AI tools. That is, DeepSeek is there, Gemini is there, ChatGPT is there. We are churning out engineers probably more than any other country in the world. Yet we don't have anything indigenous of our own. Getting the point here. So that is the idea behind this. So this is what I would call AI governance. The next stage of evolution. The Union government on Thursday launched AI Kosha, a platform with data sets that is being touted as a home for non-personal data that will assist with developing artificial intelligence models and tools. The platform contains 316 data sets, the bulk of these being programs to help in creating or validating language translation tools for Indian languages. Main idea is that translation tools. Clear, people? Moving on. Rupees 1 lakh crore fund to stimulate private sector research and development close to approval. The government is close to finalizing an ambitious 1 lakh crore fund to stimulate private sector investment in core research and development. Funds primarily in the form of low interest long-term loans will be available to private companies to develop novel products and new intellectual property. These funds cannot be used by universities or academic institutes, but they may be co-opted by a private company towards developing technology. A major weakness of India's investment in R&D, experts have pointed out since long, is that the share of investment in R&D as a percentage of GDP is less than 1%, whereas scientifically advanced countries spend between 1.5 to 3%. In this, the private sector investment in overall R&D spend has remained 30 to 36% in India, whereas countries such as the US and China see private sector contribute 75% and 77% towards research and development. After 77 years of independence, now we have come to our senses that R&D should be our main focus. And that too, private sector should take the lead. In India, public sector is leading in what? Research and development. And when it is anything under public sector, we know how outdated it will be. Very simple point. HAL took a good 32 years just to make one light combat aircraft called Tejas. So the idea here is we have sanctioned 1 lakh crore fund for the private sector is for what purpose? To encourage more R&D, especially in private sector. Because in the Western world, because in USA or in China, private takes the lead by more than 70% in R&D. India, hardly we take any lead. Clear? That is the whole idea. So what is this again? Army seeks inclusion of additional areas in Manipur under AFSPA. Not a surprise. More and more violence is erupting in that state again and again. So once again, systems theory again. Center issues guidelines to tackle high rate of job card deletions under MGNREGS. This is a constant feedback that has been coming under NREGA rules. That is, with more automation and data entry conditions, etc. coming into place, many beneficiaries' name has got deleted. And what is the number we are looking at? 10.43 crore workers have been deleted from the program. High rate of deletions has coincided with the government's push for an Aadhaar-based payment system. But the government has asserted that there is no correlation between the deletions and the new system. The center has said that all job card or name deletion should take place only after due verification in the Gram Sabha held for approving the shelf of works. So verification has to come from where? Gram Sabha. But for that again, you need to have a Gram Sabha there. If that is not there, if proper panchayat elections are not conducted, then Deletions can be done only for reasons such as permanent migration of the household to urban areas or a different panchayat, the gram panchayat being declared an urban settlement, the card proved to be a duplicate, registration based on forged documents, or the death of the worker. The name of the deleted workers or job cards have to be published in public domain for at least 30 days according to the guidelines. Twice a year, the guidelines suggested Gram Sabha has have to convened to discuss the draft list of job cards and workers flagged for deletions and the respective objections received. At these assemblies, the households have to be informed of their right to appeal job card cancellations with clear guidelines on the appeal process. Bottom line is what? When more than 10 crore people are getting deleted, that means there is definitely some glitch in the system. Somewhere something is not right. So center has issued under what conditions you can delete somebody's name. Again, based on what? The feedback received so far. Center concerned over hospitals not sharing organ transplant data. The union government has expressed serious concern over hospitals not sharing data on organ transplant activities with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Dated sent to the health secretaries of all states and union territories. The National Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization, NOTO, which functions under Directorate General of Health Services, called for urgent intervention of the competent authority to check the non-compliance of the transplant hospitals in updating the organ transplantation data. Center asked health secretaries to direct hospitals and transplant centers to furnish comprehensive data. It is mandatory to update the data online on the NOTO portal regularly and register both the donors and recipients of living transplants in the National Transplant Registry within 48 hours of the transplant procedure. Getting the point here? So once again, what are we ensuring here? One is systems theory. The other is through NOTO, we are trying to ensure accountability. This also warrants what? Center should behave in a theory Y manner. Clear? Local governance. Falls to 40 municipal bodies held in Haryana. 46.4% is the turnout recorded. You can clearly see very poor turnout. This clearly shows what sort of interest people are having in matters of panchayat elections or municipal elections. In Chhattisgarh, husbands take oath in place of women panchayat representatives. Sarpanch Pati system. And most of them are very shameless about it. They are pretty much like, yeah, women are not supposed to go out. Women shouldn't go out. So this is how it is. You can clearly see from this picture. Husbands of newly elected women panchayat representatives taking oath at Parashwara village in Kabirdham district. According to the officials of the 11 ward panchas elected in the Parashwara village panchayat, 6 were women while the sarpanch was a man. The husbands of the 6 women panchas and the other elected representatives were sworn in by the panchayat secretary. Panchayat secretary itself is allowing this to happen. Getting the point here. 52% turnout for Panipat civic polls counting on March 12th. Again, Panipat Municipal Corporation were held on Sunday with 52.5% voters turning out to exercise their franchise. That is the maximum you can expect for these municipal elections. Chhattisgarh government announces new scheme for special incentives for Maoist-free panchayats. So that again, if you see, announced a new scheme offering construction works worth 1 crore and other incentives for Maoist-free panchayats. So the panchayats they are giving the responsibility to the panchayats here, or actually as an incentive. That is, it's almost like your differential piece wage plan. If your panchayat is panchayat free, we will give you a 1 crore package like that. Getting the point here. So this can be even related to what? Integration. India launches multi-nation alliance for collaboration on sustainable development. India on Monday launched the Cities Coalition for Circularity, a multinational alliance for city-to-city collaboration, knowledge sharing and private sector partnerships for sustainable urban development. Integration you can call it, new public service you can call it. Metrics organization also you can call it. Indian Railways to dig ponds under government's Mission Amrit Sarovar. Indian Railways will dig. Under what? Mission Amrit Sarovar. Why? To recharge the groundwater table. That is integration, right? You're bringing in all the available players there and collaborating with them. Indian Railways will dig ponds as part of the Union government's Mission Amrit Sarovar that aims to address the critical issue of water scarcity in the country. Amrit Sarovar was launched in April 2022 with the ambitious goal of constructing or rejuvenating 75 ponds in each district of the country. Mind you, 75 ponds in each district. The project made significant progress, and as of October 2024, more than 68,000 ponds have been completed, rejuvenating surface and groundwater availability in various regions. These ponds have not only addressed immediate water needs but also established sustainable water resources. Phase 2 of the mission was launched with a renewed focus on ensuring water availability with community participation. Jan Bhagidari. At its core, it aims to strengthen climate resilience, foster ecological balance, and deliver lasting benefits for future generations. As part of these initiatives, the government roped in the railways for desilting, excavating, identified water bodies of constructing new ones at sustainable sites in the vicinity of railway lines. Railway authorities were told to request the respective district authorities to identify possible sites for the creation of new water bodies near railway work sites. This is the idea. Wherever any empty space is available, it is not going to be useful for anything else. Dig up on there. Recharge the groundwater table like that. And this will also help not only in recharging the groundwater, but in whenever it rains or even if it floods, these ponds can actually absorb the excess water and reduce the impact or intensity of the flood. Got the picture here, people? So this again, if you see, you can categorize it as also as what? Systems theory. Participative management. High-powered Defense Committee identifies key thrust areas for modernization of IAF. Empowered Committee for Capability Enhancement of the Indian Air Force, headed by Defense Secretary Rajesh Kumar Singh, identified key thrust areas and made recommendations for medium and long-term measures in its report presented to Defense Minister Rajnath Singh. IAF had listed priorities for addressing the shortfall in fighter jet numbers. The recommendations will be looked at in a holistic manner and the government is open to take necessary measures. The high-powered committee was constituted on the back of huge delays in fighter induction in the IAF amid rapid modernization. So here if you see who all were involved. Committee was formed on the direction of the Defense Minister to holistically examine all issues. It was chaired by the Defense Secretary with the Vice Chief of Air Staff, Secretary Defense Production, Secretary Department of Defense Research and Development, Chairman of DRDO, Director General Acquisition as members and the Deputy Chief of the Air Staff. Clear? Informal groups. Tribal body defies diktat on freeing up roads in Manipur. A tribal body in Manipur has decided to defy the center's bid to facilitate movement on all roads linking the Meitei-dominated Imphal Valley to the country and beyond. These hills are largely inhabited by Kuki-Zo people caught in a now dormant conflict with the non-tribal Métis since May 2023. The conflict has reduced, but still some internal issues are going on. So, when the center wants to allow smooth movement on the roads, community is not allowing. And here domination will not work out. Domination theory has limitations because of this one major reason. Here you will have to take what type of decisions. You will definitely have to go for satisficing. You will definitely have to do what? Ensure zone of indifference and zone of acceptance. Both are adhered to. You will also have to ensure what? The hygiene needs as well as the basic needs of the tribal people are met. You will also have to ensure that whatever you take, it is done through integration or sometimes compromise. Center will have to compromise. Don't expect the tribals to compromise. Look into complaints of political parties, EC tells state level polling officers. Amid complaints of anomalies in voters list, Election Commission on Tuesday asked its state level officials to hold regular interactions with political parties. The political parties, you cannot really call it a formal group. I agree, they have a formal symbol, everything. But the fact of the matter here is Election Commission of India, a constitutional body, is asking its officials to go and give or clear the doubts of political parties. Clearly showing that those days are gone where you sit at a pedestal and order things. Today it is all about horizontal collaboration. Everybody are equal. You work like a matrix. Associations put out ethics code for real money gaming firms. 3 industry associations in the real money gaming space put out a code of ethics for their members. They announced on Monday. Because of the e-gaming platform, it does not have any ethics or any guidelines as of now. So the associations themselves came out with one. Clear? Informal group. Raise gratuity ceiling for private sector workers. CITU, Center of Indian Trade Unions, has written to Union Labour Ministry demanding an amendment to the Payment of Gratuity Act to enhance the maximum gratuity ceiling limit from the present 20 lakh to rupees 25 lakh. Informal work group giving suggestions to the government. Central officials hold meetings with Cookies or Métis groups. Again, center holding meetings with what? The 2 major groups there. Cookie, Métis. To bring in peace, like I told you, compromise or integration. That is the only way. Civil society groups call on government to not water down RTI Act. Over 30 civil society organizations are urging the union government to avoid gutting the RTI, the National Council for People's Right to Information, announced on Friday. So, this particular thing again, that is an amendment was brought in under the Digital Data Protection Act, wherein individuals' private data cannot be given under RTI. So what happens here because of this is, if I make an application to get to know who are the beneficiaries under NREGA, I will not be able to get it anymore because that comes under privacy clause. That is the reason why civil society members are actually urging the government to not to weaken the RTI system. The issue is around Section 8(1)(j) of the RTI Act, which allows government agencies to refuse applications for information if they relate to an individual's personal information. So the section has a provision which allows for personal information to be disclosed if there is public interest in doing so. In 2023, the Union government, in spite of protest, removed the provision through an act of parliament. This was done through the last section of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. That means what they basically initially the question was, if it is a data that can be revealed to the parliament, then it can be given to any RTI request also, even if it is a personal data. But with the Digital Data Protection Act, government just nullified it. Nobody's digital data can be taken up, private data. And these days, MG NREGA data, National Food Security Mission, any data you're talking about, they are all online. Clear? NPM. Belgium defense giant ties up with Indian firm to manufacture tank turrets. Simple, pretty much direct. Why? Efficiency, economy, effectiveness. Why can't we do it in our country? Will take time. Looking for ties with Indian varsities, Irish education minister. Not exactly NPM, but because NPM, when we generally say, it is all about private player partisanship. But here we can see governments are actually, 2 governments are trying to interact to ensure what? Quality education is reaped, or the benefit of quality education is reaped by both Irish and Indian students. For that, Ireland and India is collaborating. CAG. CAG Finance Commission hold consultation on public finances fiscal challenges. It is 2 constitutional body collaborating. Nothing. They are just discussing, interacting. Talked about technology adoption, standardization of accounting practices, One of the major issue, even in the accounting practices, etc., is CAG. If you actually see, CAG will audit center, state, not local bodies. Because CAG is not auditing local bodies, what is the next issue? Finance Commission has to depend on reports from the State Finance Commission. But who has to appoint the State Finance Commission? State government. Will, and the one thing what we know is state government rarely appoints the SFC. So there is no way of knowing what is the financial health of local bodies. This is one major issue in our country. Clear? Digital governance. Amid charges of anomalies, easy to use digital platform to reduce errors. EC has decided to deploy a unified information technology architecture with a customized dashboard to facilitate different stakeholders and minimize human error. The single window platform will streamline input and output of information with role-based access. This will ensure smooth communication between the functionaries with inbuilt cross-verification to minimize any human error. Clear? Why we are bringing in this? Very simple. EC is already under the dock. For what? For duplication of voters' ID. So EC is decided to go completely online. Clear, people? Center asks gig workers to register on eShram portal. The Union Ministry of Labour and Employment has urged gig and platform workers to register on the eShram portal for formal recognition and access to benefits under the Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Ministry noted that the scheme provides a cover of rupees 5 lakhs per family per year for a secondary and tertiary care hospitalization across over 31,000 public and private empaneled hospitals in the country. The previous budget had provided for the registration of online platform workers on the eShram portal, issuing identity cards to them and for healthcare coverage under ABPMJAY. Very good initiative. Some semblance of protection for the Ola, Uber, Swiggy, Zomato, Amazon delivery boys, etc. APAR ID system voluntary, but activists and parents raise concern over growing mandates. Education's ministries, academic, account registry, ID for school students through enrollment is supposed to be voluntary. The APAR ID ties into DigiLocker and the Academic Bank of Credits, which the government hopes to use to standardize students' school transcripts in a uniform way as a single source of truth. APAR ID system has drawn scrutiny on data privacy with necessity grounds. While the Education Ministry has websites that getting an APAR ID is not mandatory, CBSE told schools in a circular in January that it expects them to ensure 100% saturation of APAR IDs for all students, a directive that many schools have taken as a mandate. APAR IDs are linked to Aadhaar, and some parents who are willing to enroll their children have reported issues linking the students' Aadhaar with APAR due to spelling mismatch between their name in school records and the Unique Identification Authority of India database. Such parents must be referred to a common service center to update children's documents, the CBSE said in its January circular. Clear? So, making and again, many people will, as usual, quote the Puttaswamy judgment, right to privacy. See, the APAR ID's basic purpose is to have a clear idea of the student's progress, school progress. There is no faking, there is no gimmickry there, mockery there, nothing. So the credit system, etc., how many credits the student has, what is the student's performance, everything can be tracked online. That is the basic purpose behind it. So any school, college, even Western schools or colleges can easily authenticate a student's performance. So the only grievance against it is what? The name in Aadhaar and the name in the school records are different. That will create problem even in the future for the student. This is one major issue what Indian parents will never learn. Putting an initial in front, then putting an initial in the back, sometimes increasing the size of the surname, sometimes decreasing the size of the surname. Family name will have a different spelling in Aadhaar, will have another spelling in the birth certificate, keeps on varying. System won't take. But this will definitely create trouble even if the child is planning to take any government related document in the future. Driving license, PAN card, Aadhaar, anywhere it can create trouble. So it is very important that the names are the same. Privacy concern that does not have any sense in today's digital world. Getting the point here. Moving on. CAT. Wankade's transfer from Mumbai to Chennai squash. The Central Administrative Tribunal has set aside the transfer of IRS officer Samir Wankade from Mumbai to Chennai, saying the Revenue Department patently violated its own guideline. Getting the point here. Mr. Wankade made headlines for allegedly demanding rupees 25 crore from Bollywood actor Shah Rukh Khan's family by threatening to implicate his son Aryan Khan in the Cordelia Cruise drug bust case during his tenure in the NCB Mumbai in 2021. Getting the point here. So CAT intervenes whenever they feel, or aggrieved officer can approach the CAT when he or she feels that their transfer is not reasonable. CAT has found it, so definitely there is a chance, until and unless obviously the government moves to the High Court, this order will stay valid. That means the officer will be brought back to Mumbai again. Governor. Assam governor will now head autonomous councils if polls are delayed. Assam Assembly on Thursday passed amendment bills related to 7 autonomous councils, authorizing the governor to take over the functioning of these bodies if holding of elections is found to be impractical, even at the end of the mandated extended term of the elected committees. If elections keeps on getting delayed, then who will head these councils? Autonomous councils? Governor will head it. Not actually a good decision. Getting the point here. This is a clear case of also what? Domination. This won't be liked by the people there. Clear? Civil services. No recruitment in MES interpreter cadre for 10 years. Interpreter means somebody who knows to translate the language both in its literary form, not just in the literary form, like in depth, not simply translating it for word to word, but instead capturing even the essence or the substance of that entire phrase. Very few people are there in this service now. Generally now this is always taken over by IFS officers, but now once again, because India's global footprint is increasing, it has now again come in demand again, or rather the systems theory verifies that we need to have interpreters put in place. Clear, people? Data point. Chart shows the union budget allocation for the Semiconductor India program. Budgeted estimate, revised estimate, actual spending. This is the budgeted estimate. Revised estimate is this much. Actual spending is how much? Just 681.11 crore. Going down. Going down. 2025, 26, what will happen? We should see. Share of semiconductor chips in India's total imports. Monolithic, memories, other, amplifier, parts of electronics. Value of import of semiconductor chips in India in lakh crore. Year-wise share of import value of chips. The maximum import we are from, always we have been taking it from where? Mostly from China. Just 1 year it was higher in Hong Kong, but otherwise China and Hong Kong not so different. But otherwise, we are dependent on China and Hong Kong maximum. Chart shows the average wage or salary earnings by regular wage salaried employees in current weekly status. June 2019, it was 13,018. 2024, it is 13,129. Slight increase only. More or less, the salary has remained the same, but expenditure has gone up. Chart shows the average earnings for casual laborer. 244 it was, became 277 in a 5-year period. 10,000 it was, it is still 10,000 only. Number of cases filed under the NDPS Act, which state cases in Kerala surged from 5,695 in 2021 to 26,619 in 22 and surpassed 30,000 in 2023. Maharashtra stands at 9,000. Punjab stands at something like 7,000. Other states, it is around 27,001. Kerala stands at more than 30,000 or 27,000. Getting the point here, people? Absolute number of immigration clearance issued to workers from various states. Highest immigration clearances has been given to UP. Lowest, if you see, I think it will be 5,000 here. Delhi. Percentage share of immigration clearances issued to workers from various states. Percentage share, if you take, again, UP takes the lead. Point 3, Delhi. PSUs. Rail PSUs are a parallel growth track. No longer tied to railway projects alone, state-run railway companies look to carry out road works and other infrastructure projects both in India and overseas. In fact, many of these public sector companies now find themselves competing against private companies after a rule change in 2021. Central public sector enterprises tied to the Indian Railways, many of which are now Navaratna companies. 1 minute. Are looking for alternative revenue streams beyond railway projects. They are exploring opportunities in roads and infra development, overseas construction project, and consultancy projects for other government departments. That is PSUs attached with Indian Railways. Earlier, they only used to do railway-related job. Now, they are going beyond that. In fact, even for railway projects, many CPSEs now find themselves competing with private companies. A 2021 order of the Railway Board had mandated that PSU should compete with private entities for rail contracts, replacing a 2009 order issued during 19 order issued during former Rail Minister Piyush Goyal's tenure. But as of now, this is the policy. See, a lot of policies changing. It is up to the government how it sees it. Now, the policy is you please go to the market and get the works. Interestingly, RVNL was established exclusively for executing railway projects assigned by the ministry. Mr. Gore even recalled a time when the company wanted to venture beyond railways but was disallowed. Now, depending upon how the capex is spent by zonal railways, the government is free to take decisions. Government may revert to the old policy or retain the existing one. Everything is on the table. Nothing can be said for sure. Means what? Look for alternate ways to generate money. Why are you only looking at the government? I am giving you the permission. Go compete with other private players. Go for auction process, bidding process. Capture works. Start working on them. If you are able to offer a better competitive price than a private player also. If I am a contractor, I want to construct road, but Railways is offering me a better price than any private player, I will take it up. Venturing overseas. Apart from competitive bidding for railway contracts, RVNL has ventured out to bid for overseas contracts, both on nomination as well as competitive basis. These include solar projects in Uzbekistan and Saudi Arabia, a transmission line project in Congo, West Central Africa, and railway projects in Turkey. The company is also planning for railway projects in Peru through government-to-government contracting. Already one international harbour project is under execution in Maldives. In Kyrgyzstan, RVNL has formed a joint venture with Kyrgyz industry to execute a railway project. The Kyrgyzstan government is negotiating with foreign bankers to arrange funding for the project. RVNL submitted a detailed project report. We have started bidding in the last 2 to 3 years. So domestically, it was easy to get. Internationally, I'm not saying it is difficult, but we were less exposed to that. Now we are getting into a lot of partnerships. So we are finding our feet there. And definitely, this is one of the important areas for us. RVNL had an order book of 97,000 crore assigned projects. From railways, account for 47,600 crore, while the rest is spread across sectors such as metros, national highways, railways, and irrigation. Getting the point here. This clearly shows that if you give permission to the PSUs, even they can become absolute competitive bodies. It is not about bringing in NPM. It is about bringing principles of NPM into PSUs. Getting the picture, people? Temasek buys 8,000 crore stake in Haldiram. So what is Temasek? Temasek is like a group, a company in Singapore that has, it's a holding company that holds the shares of all the PSUs. It makes investment decisions, investment choice. Temasek has only one mandate, generate revenue for all the PSUs out there. So Temasek has actually come to India and they buy 8,000 crore worth shares in Haldiram. Why? Because obviously Haldiram is a very profitable venture, a private company. Imagine, that is, imagine tomorrow. This is what we need to learn. Taking a leaf out of Temasek's idea, we should also have a PSU holding company representing all the top PSUs. And they should make quality investments in outside ventures like Tesla maybe or Microsoft maybe, whichever will help in generating revenue for the government. Getting the point here. Dividends from CPSE exceeds revised estimates, surged to a record 66,000 crore. Dividends from central public sector enterprises surpassed the revised estimates for the current fiscal year by over 10,000 crore, marking an all-time high. That means once when we brought in the principles of efficiency, economy, effectiveness, Maharatna, Niviratna, Maharatna, Miniratna, and Navaratna, and also brought in memorandum of understanding, PSUs have been performing well. With the threat of privatization as well as disinvestment looming over their heads, PSUs have been pushed to perform better. Clear? Taylorism. Defense procurement set to become faster. Proposals worth 54,000 crore get nod. New guidelines will reduce the timelines for the procurement process by 10 to 15%. A defense source said, adding that it is essentially cuts down a few weeks at various steps of the process based on an exercise of data crunching, cutting down unnecessary steps. Clear? With that, we come to an end of our current affairs for the entire month of March. Hope that was interesting enough for everyone and hope you understood to link it with the various theories of public administration paper 1. Any doubts or queries you have, please, this is my Telegram channel. You may contact me here and I will be there to clear your doubt. All right, people. So with that, let's wind it up. Thank you. Take care.